stared at the flickering screen in the archive room. Her 4 arms moved quickly across the controls, searching through files that no one had opened in decades. The war was going badly, and she hoped to find something, anything, that might help. The void swarm was destroying everything in its path. The archive room was cold and empty. Most of the station's crew was preparing to evacuate. Threshold Station would fall within days, maybe hours. Everyone knew it. The void swarm had already consumed 12 star systems. Billions of beings were dead or missing. The Coalition's greatest fleets had been torn apart like paper. Species, though, were known for their careful thinking. They had 4 arms, skin, and could live for 300 years. They were builders and planners, but even the best plans meant nothing against the swarm. She opened another old file. The data was corrupted, but she could read parts of it. The word human appeared on her screen. She had seen this word before in other ancient files. Most people thought humans were just stories, legends from the old war 300 years ago. The file described humans as strange creatures. They had only 2 arms. Their skin was soft and easily damaged. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They could only live for 100 years at most. Many species in the Coalition lived 5 or 10 times longer. But the file said something else. It said humans were dangerous, not because they were strong, but because they refused to accept defeat. The file mentioned a human saying, "We do not go gentle into that good night." Did not understand what that meant. She heard footsteps behind her. Commander entered the archive room. He was tall and covered in thick blue scales. He had been a soldier for 60 years. He looked tired. "Still searching?" asked. His voice was deep and rough. "Yes, Commander," replied. "I found more references to humans. They might have been real." Made a sound like a sigh. "Old myths will not save us. High Command has ordered evacuation. We leave in 6 hours. "But sir, what about the colonies behind us? If we leave, the swarm will." "I know," interrupted. His face showed pain. "But we have lost. Threshold Station cannot hold. We are outnumbered 20 to 1. There is no help coming." Looked back at her screen. The human file was still open. She read more of it. Humans supposedly fought with something called emotion. They made decisions that logic could not explain. They threw away their lives for ideas, for other beings, for things that could not be measured. The Coalition species had evolved past such things. They made decisions based on mathematics and probability. It was more efficient. It kept them alive longer. "The file says humans experienced fear," said quietly. "But they fought anyway. It says they knew they would die, but they stood their ground." Walked closer. He looked at the screen. If such a species existed, they probably destroyed themselves. Emotions lead to chaos. That is why we evolved beyond them. "Maybe," said. "But the file also says that in the old war, whenever humans appeared, the enemy retreated. Not because humans were strong, but because they were unpredictable, dangerous in ways that could not be calculated." An alarm began to sound. Red lights flashed in the archive room. His communication device came alive with urgent voices. "Commander, the swarm has broken through the defense line. They are ahead of schedule." Ran from the room. Quickly the human files to her personal device and followed him. The station's corridors were full of people running, carrying equipment, helping the wounded. In the command center, screens showed the battle outside. The void swarm looked like a black cloud in space. Millions of insect-like creatures, each the size of a small ship. They moved together as one, guided by some terrible shared intelligence. Coalition ships fired weapons into the swarm, destroying thousands of creatures. But thousands more replaced them immediately. "All ships fall back to the station," ordered. "Prepare the evacuation transports." Watched the screens. She saw Coalition ships exploding. She saw the swarm getting closer. In 300 years, no one had found a way to stop them. Every tactic failed. Every weapon was useless. The swarm just kept coming. She remembered one more line from the human file. When death itself arrives, they will stand in its way and ask for its name. A young officer shouted from his station, "Commander, new contact on long-range sensors, multiple ships, unknown configuration." Identification demanded. "None, sir. They are not using any known coalition signals. They just appeared from slip space. The energy readings are, sir, I have never seen anything like this." The screens changed. Everyone in the command center went silent. Ships appeared on the display. They were not coalition design. They were smooth and white with blue lights running along their hulls. There were dozens of them, maybe hundreds. "Are they more swarm?" someone asked. "No," the sensor officer said. "They are powering weapons. They are. They are moving between us and the swarm." Felt her 4 hearts beat faster. She looked at her device, at the human files she had. It was impossible. Humans were just stories, just myths. A message came through on all frequencies. A voice spoke in perfect coalition standard language, but the accent was strange, foreign. "Threshold Station, this is the vessel Horizon's End. We are the Terran Expeditionary Force. We received your distress calls." There was a pause. "We heard you were in trouble. We came to help." Terran, another old word from the human files. It meant from Earth. It meant human. Stared at the screen. His scales had changed color slightly, showing his shock. "This is Commander of Threshold Station. Identify yourselves. How did you find us?" The voice responded immediately. "Commander, we have been listening to the galaxy for a long time. We have been watching. We know about the Void Swarm. We know you are losing, but you are not alone anymore." On the screens, the human ships moved into formation. They positioned themselves between Threshold Station and the incoming swarm. It was a defensive pattern, but aggressive too. Like they were not just protecting the station. Like they were challenging the swarm. "Prepare for engagement," the human voice said. "This is going to be loud." Looked at, the old commander's face showed confusion, hope, and fear all at once. "They are real," whispered. "Humans are real." The void swarm crashed into the human fleet like a black wave hitting a wall. The battle began, and for the first time in 3 years, the galaxy would see what happened when humanity entered a. The human ships moved like nothing had ever seen. They did not maintain safe distances. They did not follow standard combat formations. Instead, they dove directly into the swarm, firing weapons that burned bright blue and white. "Get me a visual on those ships," ordered. His command center was silent except for the sounds of fingers on controls and the hum of equipment. The main screen changed to show a close view of one human vessel. It was smaller than coalition warships, but it moved faster, much faster. The ship rolled and twisted through space, avoiding swarm creatures that would have torn apart a coalition vessel. "Their reactor output is beyond anything in our database," an officer reported. "They are burning fuel at a rate that should destroy their engines." "Maybe they do not care about their engines," said quietly. She was still thinking about the files, about human behavior that ignored safety and logic. A new message came from the human fleet. "Threshold Station, this is Captain of the Horizon's End. We are sending a medical team and technical advisors to your station. Please prepare docking bay 7. Looked at his officers. "Do we accept?" "Sir, we know nothing about them," an officer said. "They could be dangerous." "They are fighting the swarm for us," pointed out. "If they wanted to hurt us, they would just leave." Nodded slowly. "Accept their docking request, but maintain security protocols." He paused. "And someone find me everything we have on humans. Apparently the myths are real." 20 minutes later, stood in docking bay 7 with a security team. The bay doors opened, and a small human shuttle entered. It landed smoothly, and the side door opened. A human stepped out. Had seen the descriptions in the files, but seeing a real human was different. The creature was small, barely reaching chest height. It had only 2 arms and 2 legs. Its skin was a light brown color and looked terribly thin. No scales, no armor, no protective features at all. It wore a simple uniform with a red cross symbol on the shoulder. The human smiled, knew this was a friendly expression among humans. "Hello, I am Combat Medic and it is good to finally meet other species in person." Her voice was soft and calm. She spoke Coalition standard language perfectly. She carried a large bag over one shoulder and walked forward without showing any fear, even though she was surrounded by armed soldiers. "I am Intelligence Officer," replied. "Welcome to Threshold Station. We have many questions." "I am sure you do," said. She looked around the docking bay. "First, I need to see your medical facilities. We have wounded coming from the battle, both yours and ours." Led through the station corridors, other crew members stopped and stared. Some looked frightened, others curious. A human was walking among them, a real human. In the medical center, immediately went to work. She examined the Coalition medical equipment, asked questions, and began setting up her own devices. Coalition doctors watched her nervously. "Your species biology is fascinating," said while she worked. "4 hearts, redundant organs, armored skin. You are built to survive." She smiled again, but this time it looked sad. "We are not. We break easily. We heal slowly. Evolution did not favor us with protection." "Then how do you survive?" a Coalition doctor asked. "We adapt," said simply, "and we refuse to give up." The first wounded arrived. Coalition soldiers injured in the earlier fighting, worked on them alongside the Coalition doctors. Her 2 hands moved quickly, confidently. She used techniques the Coalition doctors had never seen. She explained everything she did, teaching them. Then human casualties arrived. Watched as Coalition medics saw human biology for the first time. The medics looked horrified. "They have only 1 heart," a medic whispered. "Only 2 lungs. Their bones are so thin, how do they fight?" One human soldier on the medical bed was conscious. His leg was badly injured, but he was smiling. "We fight angry," he said. His name tag read, "Fear makes good fuel if you use it right." Stayed in the medical center, observing and asking questions. She learned that humans felt pain more intensely than most Coalition species. They recovered from injuries slower. They had shorter. Everything about them suggested they should be a weak species. But told her something else while they worked together. "We had no choice but to become strong in other ways," she said. "Our planet was harsh. We had no venom, no claws, no armor. So we developed tools, technology, strategy. And most importantly, we learned to work together even when we were afraid." "Your species still experiences fear?" asked. "Even in combat?" "Always," said. "Fear keeps us alert, keeps us careful. But we decided long ago that fear would not control us. We would control fear." In the command center was watching the battle. The human ships were holding the line. The swarm kept attacking, wave after wave, but the humans did not retreat. Their formations were aggressive, almost reckless. They took damage but gave back more. Another human voice came through the communications. "Threshold Station, this is Strike Leader Sara. I am leading fighter wings. We are going to hit their heavy units. Might get close. Do not worry if you see explosions." Watched as small human fighters launched from the larger ships. They were tiny compared to Coalition fighters. They flew directly toward the biggest swarm creatures, the ones the size of Coalition destroyers. "They will be torn apart," an officer said. But the human fighters did not get torn apart. They moved like insects themselves, fast and impossible to track. They fired missiles at close range, then spun away before the swarm could react. One fighter flew so close to a swarm heavy that it actually touched the creature's armor before firing. The explosion destroyed the swarm creature and damaged the fighter, but the pilot escaped. "Did she just—" an officer started but could not finish the sentence. She used the explosion to propel her fighter away, said, understanding. She planned to get damaged. It was part of her tactic. More human ships arrived at the station. Marines began deploying to help defend the station's outer sections, went to observe them with. The human Marines were fully armored now. Their armor was white and with blue lights, but even with armor they looked small compared to Coalition soldiers. One Marine stood in front of, his name tag read. Commander said, nodding respectfully. My squad is ready to deploy to any hot zones. Where do you need us? The swarm has breached Section 40, said, but it is suicide to go there. We are evacuating that section. Smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been in bad situations before. Commander, with respect, if we evacuated every dangerous place, humans would have gone extinct a long time ago. Give us the location. Provided the coordinates, and his squad moved out. They ran toward the danger while everyone else ran away from it, watched them go. They are either very brave or very stupid, said. Maybe both, replied, or maybe they are something else, something we forgot how to be. Back in space, Captain contacted the station again. Commander, we need to talk about strategy. May I come to your command center? Approved, said. When arrived, was surprised again. She expected a large, intimidating figure. Instead, was average height for a human with black hair and a calm face. He looked young, maybe 30 human years. He wore a simple uniform with captain's marks. Thank you for allowing us to help, said. He looked at the tactical displays. The swarm is tough. We have been studying them for years. You have fought them before? Asked. No, said, but we watched them destroy others. We prepared. We learned. We knew eventually we would have to fight. We just waited for the right moment. Why now? Asked. Why reveal yourselves now? Looked at her directly. His eyes were dark brown and intense. Because you were losing. Because the swarm would reach our territory eventually anyway. And because, he paused, because we could not just listen to distress calls and do nothing. That is not who we are. Your species willingly entered a losing war to save strangers, sounded disbelieving. Smiled slightly. Commander, we have been fighting ourselves for 10,000 years. Wars, conflicts, disagreements. We have nearly destroyed our own species multiple times, but we learned something important from all that fighting. He pointed at the display showing the battle. We learned that the best way to survive is to make sure others survive too. We learned that running away just means you fight alone later, and we learned that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to lose. Alarms sounded. The swarm was pushing harder, but the human ships held the line, and somewhere in Section 40, Marines were fighting against impossible odds, just another day for humanity. Section 40 was hell, had seen combat before, but the Void Swarm was different from any enemy he had fought. They were everywhere, crawling on walls, ceiling, floor. They made clicking sounds that echoed through the metal corridors, and they never stopped coming. His squad of 12 Marines held a narrow. The corridor behind them led to a shelter where 50 Coalition civilians were trapped. The corridor in front was filled with swarm creatures trying to break through. Contact front, someone shouted. Fired his rifle. The weapon made a sharp cracking sound and blue energy bolts tore through 3 swarm creatures. They fell, but more climbed over their bodies. Always more. Left side, called out. Private swung his heavy weapon toward the left wall where swarm creatures were trying to flank them. The weapon roared and the creatures were thrown back, their bodies smoking. Ammo check, ordered. 40%, reported. 35, another Marine called. 22, said a third. Not good. They had been fighting for 2 hours. The evacuation transport was still 20 minutes away. Coalition military doctrine said they should retreat, preserve forces, live to fight another day. But there were 50 civilians behind them, families, children. If squad retreated, those people would die. "We hold," said simply. No one argued. They all knew what "we hold" meant. It meant they would hold until the civilians were safe or until there was no one left to hold the line, whichever came first. In another part of the station, Minyu worked in the engineering section with Coalition technicians. He was a human engineer, short and quick with his hands. The Coalition workers watched him modify their weapons with a mixture of fear and fascination. "You are breaking the safety mechanisms," a technician said, worried. "Yes," Minyu agreed. He did not stop working. "Your weapons are designed to never fail. That is good for long-term use, but it makes them weak in the short term, not enough power." "But without safety mechanisms, the weapon could explode," the technician protested. Minyu looked up and smiled. "Exactly. Sometimes you need things to explode, in the right way at the right time." He finished his modification and handed the weapon back. "This will fire at twice the normal power. You can use it maybe 50 times before it overheats critically, so make those 50 shots count." "And then what happens?" "Then you throw it at the enemy while it is overheating. It will explode like a grenade." Minyu moved to the next weapon. "Waste not, want not." The technician stared at the modified weapon like it was a bomb, which, technically, it now was. Above the station, Sora let her fighter wing through the swarm. Her cockpit was cramped and hot. Sweat ran down her face. Warning lights flashed constantly. Her fighter had taken damage from 3 near misses. The right engine was at 60% power. Coalition doctrine would order her to return to base for repairs. She pushed her fighter harder instead. "Sora to wing, I have targeting on a heavy," she called out. The swarm heavy was a massive creature, bigger than most ships. Its armor was thick. It was currently tearing apart a Coalition destroyer. "I am going in." "Sora, your fighter is damaged," her wingman said. "You should pull back." "The destroyer has 300 crew," Sora replied. "I will pull back after." She dove toward the heavy. Her fighter screamed as she pushed the engines past their limits. The swarm heavy saw her coming and turned. Its weapons charged. She was too close to dodge. So she did not try to dodge. Sora fired all her missiles at once, not at the heavy's armor but at the weapons it was charging. The missiles impacted just as the swarm's weapons fired. The explosion was enormous. It caught both the swarm heavy and Sora's fighter. Sora shouted. The explosion cleared. The swarm heavy was dead, floating in pieces. The Coalition destroyer was damaged but alive. And a small escape pod was tumbling through space, emergency beacon active. "I am fine," Sora's voice came through the radio, breathless and laughing. "I ejected. Someone pick me up." Sighed with relief but also frustration. "You planned that." "Of course I planned it," Sora said. "What kind of pilot do you think I am?" Back in the medical center, worked on a Coalition soldier who had been pulled from Section 40. He was badly injured. Coalition doctors said he would not survive. His injuries were too severe. Looked at the injuries. She looked at the soldier's species biology charts. Then she started working. "What are you doing?" a Coalition doctor asked. "His primary heart is damaged. Even if we stabilize him, he will not wake up." "You have excellent medical technology," said, her hands moving quickly. "But you are too careful. You wait for the body to heal itself. Sometimes you cannot wait." She used human medical techniques, ones that were more aggressive, more dangerous. "Sometimes you have to force the body to live." The Coalition doctor watched as worked. She was not gentle. She pushed the limits of what the injured soldier's body could handle. Several times the monitors showed dangerous readings. Each time, adjusted and kept going. 30 minutes later, the soldier's eyes opened. The Coalition doctor stood in shock. "How?" he started. "Human medicine developed differently than yours," explained while checking the soldier's vital signs. "Your species evolved to be tough, to survive damage naturally. Humans did not have that luxury. We had to invent ways to survive impossible injuries. We got very good at emergency medicine because we had to. You risk killing the patient with these methods. Yes, agreed. But he was dying anyway. When someone is already dying, aggressive treatment is not really a risk. It is the only chance. The coalition doctor looked at the injured soldier who was now stable and conscious. He looked back at, "You do not give up, do you? Even when logic says there is no hope." Smiled tiredly. "Hope is not logical, doctor. That is what makes it powerful." In Section 40, Squad was down to 15% ammunition. The swarm had not stopped attacking. The Marines were exhausted. 2 were injured but still fighting. The evacuation transport was 5 minutes away. "We cannot hold 5 more minutes," said. He was reloading his weapon with his last power cell. "We are out of options." Looked around. The corridor was narrow. The swarm creatures had to come through in a limited space. That was the only reason 12 Marines had held this long against thousands of creatures. He looked at the walls, at the support structures, at the power conduits running through the ceiling. "New plan," he said. He pointed at the ceiling. "Shoot the power conduits. Everyone else fall back to the shelter." "That will cause an overload," said, understanding. "The whole corridor will explode." "Yes," said. "We are the last line anyway. If we fall back now, the swarm follows us into the shelter. But if we bring down the corridor, we will be trapped in the shelter with the civilians," a Marine pointed out. "No way out until the transport arrives." "Then we better hope the transport is on time," said. "Move." The squad fell back, aimed at the ceiling and fired his last shots. The power conduits exploded. Electricity arced through the corridor. Support beams began to collapse. Threw himself through the shelter door as the entire corridor came down behind him. Dust and smoke filled the air. Alarms screamed. But the swarm was blocked, buried under tons of collapsed metal and concrete. 50 coalition civilians stared at the human Marines. One child, a small with wide eyes, asked, "Did you just trap us in here?" "Temporarily," said, checking his squad. Everyone had made it. "But the bad guys are trapped on the other side. The transport is almost here. They will cut us out." "You collapsed the corridor to save us," an adult civilian asked. "That is the job," said. He sat down heavily, exhausted. "Besides, my commander always says, if you are not willing to trap yourself in a room with people you are protecting, then you are not really protecting them." "That is insane," the civilian said. Smiled, "Probably, but we are still alive and so are you. Sometimes insane works." The evacuation transport arrived 3 minutes later. They cut through the collapsed corridor and rescued everyone. When and his squad emerged, they found waiting. "Your entire squad survived," said, sounding amazed. "You held a position that should have been overrun in minutes. You held it for 2 hours. "Actually 2 hours and 16 minutes, sir," corrected. He looked tired but satisfied. "We were motivated." Hal asked, "How did you do it?" Thought for a moment. "We were scared the whole time, sir. Absolutely terrified. But we decided that being scared was okay as long as we kept fighting anyway. Fear is just information. It tells you there is danger. What you do with that information is what matters." Had been watching the whole conversation. She remembered the old files. The ones that said humans fought with emotion, not logic. She understood now. It was not that emotions made humans weak. It was that humans had learned to use their emotions as fuel. Fear became determination. Anger became focus. Even desperation became a weapon. The swarm did not understand this. The swarm operated on pure instinct and logic. They could not comprehend a species that fought harder when they were losing. That took bigger risks when the odds were worse. The galaxy was learning something new. Humans did not fight despite their weakness. They fought because of it. They had no choice but to be brave. No natural armor meant they built better weapons. No redundant organs meant they trained better medics. Short lives meant they valued every moment. The stories were wrong. Humans were not ancient warriors. They were something stranger, something more dangerous. They were survivors who refused to accept survival as the best outcome. The swarm learned. That was what made them so dangerous. They adapted to every tactic, every weapon, every strategy, and now they were learning about humans. In the command center, watched the tactical display with growing concern. The swarm was changing its attack patterns. Before, they had attacked in massive waves, overwhelming defenders with numbers. Now they were focusing their attacks specifically on human ships and positions. They have identified humans as the primary threat, observed. He stood beside, studying the same display. They are targeting human forces first. Captain stood on the other side of the display. He did not look surprised. We expected this. The swarm is not stupid, just different. Your ships are taking heavy damage, said. You should pull back to safer positions. We could, agreed. But that is not why we came here. He zoomed in on one section of the display. The swarm has a weakness. We have been studying them for decades. We just needed to get close enough to confirm it. Another human entered the command center. She was older than most of the other humans had seen, within her black hair. She wore a scientist's uniform. Her name tag read. Commander Officer said, nodding to them. I am Xenobiology Specialist. I need to share what we have learned about the swarm. She pulled up data on the main display. Images of swarm creatures, charts of their behavior, patterns of their attacks. The swarm operates on a collective intelligence. You know this already. They share information instantly across the entire swarm. This makes them very efficient. It also makes them impossible to surprise, said. Every tactic we use, they learn immediately and counter it. Correct, said. But that collective intelligence has a weakness. The swarm cannot understand individual sacrifice. They cannot comprehend a single unit giving up its existence for a strategic goal. To them, every unit is expendable, but only in service to the collective's survival. The idea of sacrificing units when it does not benefit the collective is alien to them. Felt her 4 hearts beat faster. You mean they cannot predict suicide attacks? More than that, said. They cannot understand why any species would accept massive casualties for a temporary advantage. It violates their basic logic. When we execute tactics with high casualty rates, the swarm treats it as an error, not a strategy. They do not adapt properly because they do not believe we will continue. His face went dark. You are talking about using your own soldiers as weapons. We are talking about using what we have, said quietly. Commander, we did not come here with illusions. We knew this would be costly. We accepted that before we arrived. No, said firmly. I will not allow it. No victory is worth the losses you are describing. A new voice joined the conversation. With respect, Commander, that is not your choice. A human walked into the command center. He was tall for a human with scars on his face and hair cut short. His uniform marked him as high-ranking. I am Commander of Human Ground Forces, and Captain is correct. We knew the cost when we volunteered for this mission. Volunteered? Asked. Every human here volunteered, said. We are not conscripts or slaves forced to fight. We chose this. We knew it would be dangerous. We accepted the risks. He looked at the tactical display. The swarm has consumed 12 systems, billions dead. If we do not stop them here, they will continue. More will die. Our children will face them. Better to pay the price now. That is not how war works, argued. You preserve your forces, you fight smart. You do not throw lives away. We are not throwing lives away, said. We are spending them. There is a difference. Every soldier who falls will fall completing an objective that brings us closer to victory. Brought up another display. We have a plan. It requires coordination between human and coalition forces. It will require human ships to take positions that will result in their destruction, but it will create an opening. The swarm will be vulnerable for approximately 6 minutes. What happens in those 6 minutes? Asked. We win, said simply, or we lose everything, but we have to try. Looked at each of the humans in turn, calm and determined, analytical and focused, and experienced. They were not excited about this plan, they were not eager to die, but they were absolutely willing to pay the price. Your plan, said slowly, what are the projected casualties? 40% of human forces, said, maybe higher. The command center went silent. Coalition officers stared in horror. 40% casualties was not a military operation. It was a massacre. That is unacceptable, said. I forbid this plan. Commander, said gently, we appreciate your concern, but we are not asking permission. We are informing you of our intentions. Your coalition ships can stay back in defensive positions. We will execute the plan with human forces only. You will get yourselves killed, shouted. Probably some of us, agreed. But the mission will succeed, and the swarm will be stopped here. Is that not worth the price? Stepped forward. Commander, may I speak? Nodded, still angry. I have studied humans since they arrived, said. I have read their old files, I have watched them fight. They are not like us. We evolved to survive, we live long lives, we protect ourselves, we measure risk and reward, we are logical. She looked at the humans. They are not logical, they evolved on a death world. Everything on their planet tried to kill them. They survived not by being strong, but by being stubborn, by refusing to accept defeat, by making the cost of defeating them too high for any predator to pay. She turned back to, Sir, they are not going to change their plan no matter what we say. This is who they are. The only choice we have is whether we help them or watch them die alone. Closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older, tired. If I order coalition ships to support this plan, many of my people will die too. Yes, said, but fewer than if we do nothing. And when our children ask us what we did when the swarm came, we can tell them we fought, together. Stood silent for a long moment. Finally he nodded. Show me the plan. The plan was called Protocol Thermopylae. Looked up the reference and found it in human history. An ancient battle where 300 human warriors held a narrow pass against an army of millions. They knew they would die. They fought anyway. They held long enough for others to escape. The plan was elegant and terrible. Human ships would form a wall between the swarm and threshold station. They would not move. They would not retreat. They would just hold. And while they held, coalition ships would flank the swarm and strike at their command nodes. But to hold, the human ships would have to absorb attacks that would destroy them. They would have to stay in position even as they died. It required discipline. It required sacrifice. It required crews who knew they were dead and fought anyway. We launch in 1 hour, announced. All forces prepare for engagement. Gathered his Marines. They knew what was coming. He could see it in their faces. Fear, determination, acceptance. We are going to the moon, said. The swarm has a main hive structure there. Our job is simple. We push into that hive. We hold as long as possible. We give the fleet time to hit the command nodes. How long do we need to hold? Asked. 6 minutes, said. Once the fleet strikes, the swarm will pull back from the moon to protect their command nodes. That is when we evacuate. And if we cannot evacuate, someone asked. Met their eyes. Then we make sure those 6 minutes matter. No one spoke. No one complained. They just checked their weapons and prepared to deploy. In the medical center, prepared for mass casualties. She knew they were coming. She organized coalition medical staff. She showed them techniques for treating injuries that should be fatal. She prepared herself mentally for what was ahead. A young coalition medic approached her. How do you prepare for this? For knowing so many will be wounded or killed. Looked at him. You do not prepare for it. You just accept it. And then you save every person you can, even when it seems impossible, especially when it seems impossible. In space, the human fleet moved into position, stood on the bridge of Horizon's End. His crew worked quietly, professionally. They knew the odds. They knew what they were about to do. "All ships, this is Horizon's End," said on the command channel. "We are humanity. We do not surrender. We do not flee. We stand. And we make the cost of victory so high that even if we fall, our enemies remember the price they paid. Today the swarm learns what it means to fight humans. Today we teach the galaxy that we are not myths or legends. We are real, and we are done hiding." He looked at his crew. For humanity, for the coalition, for everyone who ever stood against the darkness and refused to blink. The swarm came like a black tide, and the human fleet did not move. They stood, and the battle that would change the galaxy began. The human fleet held the line. From threshold stations, command center watched as swarm creatures crashed into the human defensive wall like waves against a cliff. Human ships fired continuously, their weapons burning bright in the darkness of space, and slowly, inevitably, they began to die. The first ship to fall was a human destroyer named Resilient. Its shields failed under concentrated swarm fire. The crew had 30 seconds to evacuate. They used those 30 seconds to redirect all remaining power to their weapons, firing until the last moment. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash, taking a dozen swarm heavies with it. "Resilient is down," an officer reported quietly. His voice came through the communication system. "Resilient, you are confirmed. Fair winds." It was a human saying for honoring the dead. 3 more ships fell in the next 2 minutes. Each one held position until the very end. Each one made their destruction count. Watch the display with growing horror. "They are dying." "Yes," said, "but they are winning." She pointed at the tactical display. The swarm was committing more and more forces to break through the human line. They could not understand why the humans did not retreat. The swarm adapted their tactics, but they adapted to fight an enemy that valued survival. Humans did not. Coalition ships flanked the swarm exactly as planned. They moved into attack positions, targeting the swarm command nodes that had identified. But they needed 6 minutes. The human fleet needed to hold for 6 minutes. On the moon below, led his marines into hell. The swarm hive structure was a nightmare of organic architecture and metal. Thousands of creatures moved through it like blood through veins. 100 marines pushed forward, their weapons firing constantly. "Contact everywhere," someone shouted. It was true. The swarm was all around them, above, below, in every direction. But the Marines had trained for this. They moved in tight formations, each soldier protecting the others. When one position became overrun, they fell back to the next prepared position. Slowly, they pushed deeper into the hive. "Charges placed," Minu called out. The engineer had accompanied the Marines, carrying enough explosives to destroy a city block. He was placing them at critical structural points throughout the hive. "How long until detonation?" asked while firing at a wave of swarm creatures. "I can trigger them remotely," Minu said, "but we need to be clear of the blast zone, at least 200 meters. "We are currently 1,000 meters inside the hive," pointed out, "and we have swarm between us and the exit." "Then we better move fast when the time comes," said. In orbit, Sara flew her fighter through a storm of swarm creatures. Her new fighter was already damaged. She had gone through 3 fighters this battle. Each time one was destroyed, she evacuated and got another. Each time she flew back into the fight. "Sara to Horizon's End. I have a targeting solution on a command node," she reported. "Negative," Sara replied. "Wait for the signal. All command nodes must be hit simultaneously." "Understood," Sara said. She pulled her fighter into a tight loop, dodging swarm fire, standing by. 4 minutes had passed, 2 more minutes to go. But human casualties were mounting, 10 ships destroyed, 15, 20. Each one held until the end, each one died fighting. in the medical center, worked on a human pilot who had just been brought in. His fighter had been torn apart. He should be dead. Coalition medics had declared him. Worked anyway. Her hands moved quickly, performing surgery that made the coalition doctors look away. It was brutal, aggressive. It pushed the pilot's body to its absolute limits. "He cannot survive this," a coalition doctor said. "Watch me prove you wrong," said through gritted teeth. The pilot's heart stopped, manually restarted it. His lungs collapsed. She inflated them. His blood pressure dropped to nothing. She gave him stimulants that should have killed him but instead brought him back. The pilot's eyes opened. Did we win?" he asked weakly. "Still fighting," said, "but you survived. Rest now." The coalition doctor stared. The pilot should be dead. By all logic, he was dead, but had refused to accept that reality. "How?" a doctor asked simply. "Because I am not ready to lose patients today," said. "Next case." 5 minutes had passed. One more minute. The human fleet was down to 70% strength. Ships that were still fighting were damaged, barely holding together, but they stayed in position. "All coalition ships," ordered. "Prepare to fire on all command nodes simultaneously. Target lock confirmed." "Confirmed," officers reported from multiple ships. On the Moon checked his timer. 30 seconds until the fleet strike. His Marines were falling back toward the exit, fighting every meter. They had lost 20 soldiers. 20 more were wounded but still fighting. "Minyu charges armed?" asked. "Armed and ready," Minyu confirmed. He was carrying a wounded Marine on his back while running. "On your signal." In orbit, watched his display. 15 seconds. His ship shuddered as swarm weapons struck the shields. They were failing, but they just needed 15 more seconds. 10 seconds. "All human ships prepare for command node strike," ordered. "This is what we came for." 5 seconds. Held her breath. The entire command center was silent. 0. "All ships fire," ordered. Coalition ships fired simultaneously at the swarm command nodes. Beams of energy struck from multiple directions. The command nodes, massive swarm creatures that coordinated millions of smaller units, exploded in brilliant flashes. The effect was immediate. The swarm's coordinated attacks fell apart. Creatures that had been fighting as one collective suddenly became confused, disconnected. They pulled back, retreating to protect their remaining command structure. "It worked," an officer said in disbelief. "Execute withdrawal," ordered. "The swarm is falling back." On the Moon heard the order. "All Marines move, back to the landing zone." They ran. The swarm creatures in the hive suddenly lost their coordination. Some stopped moving entirely. Others ran in random directions. The Marines pushed through the chaos, carrying their wounded. "We are clear of the blast zone," reported. "Minyu blow it," ordered. Minyu triggered the explosives. The entire hive structure exploded from within. The blast was visible from orbit, a pillar of fire reaching into the sky. The Moon's surface cracked and buckled. The Marines made it to their transport ships, bleeding, exhausted but alive. They had lost 38 soldiers. 62 survived. In space, the swarm was retreating. For the first time in 3 years, the unstoppable enemy was running. "All ships pursue and destroy," ordered. "Do not let them regroup." Coalition and human ships chased the fleeing swarm. The battle continued for 3 more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The swarm's advance was broken. When the battle finally ended, the command center erupted in celebration. Coalition officers cheered. Even allowed himself a small smile. His face appeared on the main screen. He looked exhausted. "Threshold station, this is Horizon's End. We have confirmed swarm retreat. The station is secure." "What are your casualties, Captain?" asked. There was a pause. 38% of human forces said quietly. "We lost 23 ships, 412 crew members, 300 wounded. The celebration in the command center stopped. The price of victory was written on his tired face. Coalition casualties are 12%, said. You protected us. You paid the cost so we would not have to. That was the plan, said. That was always the plan. Hours later, met in person. He stood on the observation deck, looking out at the damaged human fleet. So many ships showing scars. So many empty spaces where ships had been. Was it worth it? Asked quietly. Was silent for a moment. Ask me in 10 years, he finally said, if the swarm is stopped, if the galaxy is safe, if children grow up without fear of being consumed, then yes, it was worth it. The story said humans were warriors, said. They were wrong. Looked at her, what are we then? Warriors fight because they are strong, said. You fight because you refuse to let weakness stop you. You know you can die, you accept it, but you fight anyway. She paused. That is far more terrifying than any warrior. Join them on the observation deck. He looked at. The Coalition Council has sent a message. They formally request humanity join the Galactic Coalition. They want you as allies. We accept, said, on one condition. What condition? We do not want to be your weapons, said firmly. We do not want to be the species you call when you need someone to die for you. We want to be partners. We will fight with you, not for you. Nodded slowly, agreed. In the medical center, finally took a break. She had been working for 18 hours straight. Every bed was full, but everyone would survive. She had made sure of that. A coalition doctor approached her. I want to learn your techniques, he said. I want to understand how you save people who should die. It is simple, said. You just refuse to give up, even when it seems impossible, especially when it seems impossible. On the moon's surface stood with his surviving Marines. They were planting markers for the 38 who had fallen, small stones with names carved into them. It was a human tradition. We will remember them, said. Always, agreed. A young coalition soldier approached them. He had fought alongside the Marines during the battle. I watched you fight, he said. You were scared, I could see it, but you fought anyway. Being brave does not mean not being scared, explained. Being brave means being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. Can you teach me? The soldier asked. Can you teach me to fight like a human? Smiled. I can teach you tactics, I can teach you techniques, but fighting like a human, he shook his head. That is something you have to choose for yourself. It means accepting that you might die. It means running toward danger instead of away from it. It means making fear your fuel instead of your prison. I want to learn, the soldier said firmly. Looked at his squad, they nodded. Then we will teach you. Weeks later, updated the human database. She deleted the old files about myths and legends. She wrote a new entry. Humans are not mythical warriors. They are not ancient legends. They are a species that evolved on a hostile world with no natural defenses. They survived not through strength, but through stubbornness, through refusing to accept defeat, through treating their own fragility as a problem to be solved rather than a fate to be accepted. They experience fear. They understand mortality. They know they can die. But they decided that knowledge would make them careful, not cowardly. They turned their weakness into a weapon. They made their awareness of death a reason to fight harder, not a reason to give up. The old stories did not do them justice. Nothing could, because humanity is not something that can be fully described in words. It is something that must be witnessed, must be experienced, must be understood through action, not explanation. They are our allies now, our partners, and the galaxy will never be the same, because now the galaxy knows humans are real, and when they enter everything changes. On the horizon's end received a message from Earth. More ships were coming, more humans volunteering to help. The war against the swarm would continue, but now the coalition had hope. Looked at the stars. Somewhere out there the swarm was regrouping, Learning, adapting, they would return. But so would humanity, again and again, as many times as necessary. Because that was what humans did. They stood, they fought, they paid the price. And they never, ever gave up. The stories were wrong, but the reality was better.